What would you say if a cop looked into your window right now and asked anything illegal in the car? If you answer that the wrong way, you can talk yourself into a search you never had to help with. One nervous sentence can turn a basic stop into a full-blown investigation. Before I reveal the exact words, hit subscribe so you can find this video again when your heart is pounding and your mind goes blank, and tap like right now, because what you learn here could stop you from handing away your rights in under 10 seconds. Here's what you're about to learn. First, the exact sentence that stops you from helping the officer build a reason to search. Second, the one line that blocks consent without sounding rude or scared. Third, the question that tells you if the stop is still about a ticket or if it has turned into something bigger. And fourth, the lawyer line you use if the officer starts pushing harder and acting like you should just explain yourself. Most people have no idea how much damage they do by trying to sound innocent. They think a fast answer makes them look cooperative. A lot of the time, it just gives the officer more roads to go down. Let me show you exactly how to stay calm, sound normal, and protect yourself without arguing, panicking, or making a scene. Here's the reality: that question sounds simple, but it is not simple. When an officer asks anything illegal in the car, they are not asking because they are curious about your life. They are testing you. They are listening to your voice, your words, your body language, and how fast you try to explain. If you laugh, overtalk, or start guessing, you can create a bigger problem than the stop started with. A basic traffic stop is supposed to stay about the reason you were pulled over. But once you start talking too much, the stop can drift into a different lane. Now it is about suspicion. Now it is about searching. Now it is about what you said, how you said it, and whether your answer gave them an opening. That is why this matters so much for you. The first thing you need is a clean answer to that question. Here's exactly what you say. Officer, I'm not answering questions. Word for word. Memorize that line. It is short. It is calm. It does not lie. It does not invite a fight. It does not help the officer build a story around you. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection because your biggest risk is often not what they already know. It is what you say when you get nervous. A lot of drivers think they need to prove they are harmless. So the officer asks, anything illegal in the car? And they start blurting things out. No, nothing illegal. Well, not mine, just my buddy's bag. I mean, I had a knife in the trunk last week. There's nothing bad, unless that old vape counts. Do you see the problem? That answer is no longer no, now it is a story. Now the officer has details. Now the officer has things to ask about. Now you are helping the search grow legs. Bad way. Most drivers say no, nothing illegal. You can check if you want. Then the officer hears fear, gets consent, and the stop gets much bigger. Good way. Smart drivers say, officer, I'm not answering questions. Then the officer gets no extra facts from your mouth and has to work with what they already have. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it is simple and clean. It gives them less to untangle later. And yes, you might feel awkward saying it. That is normal. You are not used to silence in tense moments, but awkward is better than dangerous. Awkward does not put words in a police report. Awkward does not turn a guess into probable cause. Awkward does not give the officer a reason to ask 5 more questions. Watch what happens when you answer that way. The officer may repeat the question, they may make it sound smaller, they may say, I'm just asking, they may act offended, they may say, if there's nothing illegal, why not just tell me? None of that changes your answer. Your job is not to make the stop feel smooth. Your job is to protect yourself. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it stops you from filling the silence with risky talk. A lot of searches start with panic speech, not with solid evidence. And no, this line does not guarantee you drive away. That is important. If the officer already has a legal reason, they can still act on it. But your words should never become the free extra tool they use against you. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings about how clearly you have to use your rights. Clear words matter. Vague feelings do not. So your first line is not a speech. It is one sentence. Officer, I'm not answering questions. That is your shield. Think you could stay that calm during a real stop? Let me know in the comments, because most people swear they would until the lights hit their mirror. Now let's move to the second tactic, because this is where drivers lose even after they stop talking. Here's exactly what you say when the officer asks to look in your car. Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Word for word, memorize that line too. It is one of the most important sentences you can ever learn for a roadside stop. Here's the trick: they don't want you knowing. Consent is the shortcut. If you give it, the officer does not need your help anymore. You just open the door yourself. A lot of drivers think saying no will make them look guilty. That fear is what gets them. The officer asks, "Mind if I take a quick look?" And the driver hears a casual request. It sounds small, it sounds harmless, it sounds like saying no would be weird, so they say yes just to avoid tension. That is where the problem starts. Once the search begins, every pocket, bag, container, and corner becomes your problem. Maybe you forgot something was in there. Maybe your friend left something. Maybe something legal looks suspicious. Maybe nothing is there at all, but you just made a short stop last much longer than it needed to. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I guess that's fine, I don't have anything to hide." Then the officer gets a free search and every item in the car becomes fair game. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Then the officer knows you are not giving away your protection for free. Listen closely because this is critical. Refusing consent does not mean you should argue if they search anyway. You are not fighting on the roadside. You are making your position clear. That matters later. If the stop gets reviewed, your clear refusal helps show you did not agree. That can matter a lot. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it creates a clean record. No confusion, no mixed signals, no "well, maybe he kind of agreed." Just a firm no and yes, this is 100% legal. You do not need to explain your reason. You do not need to apologize for saying it. You do not need to prove you are a good person first. Your rights do not depend on making an officer feel comfortable. Your rights are still your rights even when a question sounds friendly. Now, some people will hear this and think, "So if I say that, the search always stops." No, that is not what I am telling you. If an officer claims another legal reason, they may still keep going, but you should never be the person who makes the search easier by saying yes. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection. Because once consent is given, you cannot take it back like magic. So do not say, "I'd rather not." Do not say, "Why do you need to?" Do not say, "Only if I watch." Say the exact line, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." This connects to the basic rule behind consent cases. In plain English, courts have long treated a voluntary yes as a very big deal. If you freely agree, the search gets a lot easier for the government to defend later. That is why your no matters so much. Not because it guarantees a win in the moment, because it stops you from volunteering away one of your best protections at the start. The third tactic is the question that tells you whether the stop is still normal or whether it is turning into a fishing trip. You look at the officer and say this, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Those exact words, keep them in your head exactly that way. This line matters because it forces clarity. If the business of the stop should be done and the officer keeps talking, you need to know whether you are still legally stuck there or whether you can end the conversation. A lot of drivers never ask this because they assume every extra question must be answered. That is not always true. A stop is not supposed to become endless small talk just because the officer wants to keep digging. One Supreme Court ruling said police cannot add extra time to a traffic stop for unrelated investigation without more legal reason. In simple English, that means they cannot keep you there longer just to go hunting for something else once the original job of the stop is over. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings, and it matters a lot for you in the real world. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I'm in a hurry, can I go now?" Then the officer ignores the emotion and keeps control of the stop. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Then the officer has to make the situation clear instead of leaving you in the dark. Watch what happens when you use that question calmly. If the officer says you are free to leave, then leave. Do not hang around and keep chatting because you want to seem nice. Nice can become risky fast. If the officer says you are detained, then you know this is no longer a casual conversation. That is your signal to stop volunteering anything and stick to your short lines. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it changes the whole tone. It tells the officer you know the difference between a request and an order. Let me show you exactly why that matters, if you do not know whether you are free to leave. You may think you have to keep answering. You may think every question is part of the ticket. You may think you have no choice. That confusion is expensive. The officer asks, "You got anything illegal in the car?" Then where are you coming from? Then who else has been in the vehicle? Then mind if I take a look? And before you know it, the stop has drifted way beyond a broken taillight. One clean question helps you see the line. If you've made it this far, you're already ahead of most drivers. Show me by hitting that like button, because the next tactic is the one you use when the pressure really starts building. Now we get to the line that matters when the officer starts pushing harder, especially if they act like only guilty people ask for a lawyer. Here's exactly what you say. "I am invoking my right to remain silent." I want a lawyer. Word for word. Do not water that down. Do not turn it into a question. Do not say, maybe I should get a lawyer. Do not say, do you think I need one? Say the sentence exactly. Why does that matter so much? Because the law is rough on vague words. One Supreme Court case says police do not have to stop questioning you unless you clearly ask for a lawyer. Another says sitting there quietly is not always enough by itself. In plain English, hints do not protect you the way clear words do. If you want silence, say you are using silence. If you want a lawyer, say you want a lawyer. Not maybe, not probably, clearly, bad way. Most drivers say maybe I should talk to somebody or I think I need a lawyer. Then questioning. Can keep going because the request was fuzzy. Good way. Smart drivers say I am invoking my right to remain silent. I want a lawyer. Then they have clearly used both protections in plain language. This line becomes even more important when an officer tries the mind game in your title. They say you don't need a lawyer. Or if you didn't do anything, just clear this up. Or lawyers make this worse. That is not your cue to defend yourself. That is your cue to shut the conversation down. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection once questioning turns serious. The more stressed you are, the more dangerous your own words become. And yes, this is 100% legal. Asking for a lawyer is not an admission. Staying silent is not an admission. Using your rights is not suspicious. It is smart. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it is clean, direct, and hard to twist. Once you say it, stop talking. No long speech, no angry lecture, no explanation about why you feel disrespected. Just stop. Here's the reality. A lot of people ruin this step by saying the line, then going right back to talking. Do not do that. If you say you are remaining silent, then remain silent. If you say you want a lawyer, then stop helping the questioning continue. The power is not just in saying the sentence. The power is in what happens after the sentence. Silence. Now let's put the legal picture together. In plain English, Miranda v. Arizona is the big case people know from TV. In simple words, if police are questioning you while you are in custody, you have the right to be told that you can stay silent and ask for a lawyer. Davis v. United States matters because it says your request for a lawyer must be clear. Maybe is not enough. Berghuis v. Thompkins matters because it says silence alone is not always enough either. You need to clearly say you want to remain silent, and Rodriguez v. United States matters because it says a traffic stop cannot be stretched out for unrelated digging without more legal reason. Put all that together and the lesson is simple. Your rights work best when your words are short, clear, and direct. So now let's walk through a real stop from start to finish. You are driving home at night. The lights come on behind you. You pull over, keep your hands visible, and give your license, registration, and insurance when asked. So far normal. Then the officer leans in and asks, anything illegal in the car? Most drivers panic right there. They say, no, nothing, you can look. Or they start over-explaining. No, I'm just coming from my cousin's house. That bag is my friend's. I had a pocket knife earlier but not now. That is the wrong road. Every extra word gives the officer something to chase. Now, watch the smart version. The officer asks, anything illegal in the car? You say, officer, I'm not answering questions. If the officer asks to search, you say, officer, I do not consent to any searches. If the stop seems done but the questions keep coming, you ask, am I being detained or am I free to leave? If the officer starts leaning harder, saying you should just explain or that you do not need a lawyer, you say, I am invoking my right to remain silent. I want a lawyer. Then you stop. No speech, no panic, no trying to rescue the moment with more words. See the difference? In the wrong version, you become the main source of suspicion. In the right version, the officer has to work with what they actually have, not what you nervously handed them. In the wrong version, you give away facts, guesses, and even consent. In the right version, you give documents, not stories. That is how you keep a traffic stop from growing bigger just because you got scared at the wrong second. Coming next week, what to do when cops ask to search your phone. Subscribe because that video could save your private life from being opened up in minutes if you say the wrong thing. So here's the recap you need burned into your head. If they ask what is in the car, say, officer, I'm not answering questions. If they ask to search, say, officer, I do not consent to any searches. If the stop keeps dragging on, ask, am I being detained or am I free to leave? And if questioning turns serious, say, I am invoking my right to remain silent. I want a lawyer, short words, calm voice, no extra talking. That is how you protect yourself when pressure hits. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the phone search video next week. Smash that like button if this gave you real words you can actually use. And drop a comment telling me which line you're going to memorize first. Stay safe out there.